What's in the Hat is produced in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada, which is located on the unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples. Each nation has distinct histories and distinct traditional territories that fully or partially encompass the city. We encourage you to learn more about the host nations whose ancestors have occupied and used these lands, including parts of present-day Burnaby for thousands of years.
Oh, hey! Did you guys there?
I'm Hannah.
And I'm Yoga Rosh.
And you're watching
What's in the Hat?
So, what can you expect from this podcast?
From this podcast, you will expect content created by people with disability.
Oh, so is it a podcast about disability?
No, it's not. It's so much more than that.
So, Rosh, what's the Laughing Matters mini-series all about?
This mini-series is all about education and making it accessible for everybody.
Sounds awesome. Tell me more.
We are putting professors on the spot, LOL, to learn more about their field and how humor connects us all.
What are we talking about today?
Linguistics.
Yastas Pivya, the Ekume Polikalimera Simira. So you're probably wondering what the heck I'm saying. I'm speaking in Greek, my language, which means, hello everyone, we're gonna have a splendid day today. So, welcome to What's in the Hat. Remember, laughing matters, yo.
Thanks, Janette. And with that lovely welcome, I'll also give a land acknowledgement because today we're filming in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada, which is located on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples. And today, me and Janette are here with Dr. Amanda Cardoso, a lecturer at UBC. Welcome, Amanda!
Yay!
Hello. And just a brief introduction on who Amanda is. And she's a lecturer at UBC in the Department of Linguistics, as Janette beautifully alluded to with her language at the beginning. And Amanda earned her undergrad degree at the University of Victoria, then completed her PhD and Master's of Science?
Master's of Science.
Master's of Science at the University of Edinburgh, where she explored dialect emergence in Liverpool and the population movements that have been suggested to be the cause of this dialect emergence. Her research area and themes include laboratory phonology, phonetics, phonology, I already said phonology, sociolinguistics, language, sustainability, and transnationalism. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the show. But before we get started, is there anything else you want to share about what you are doing right now?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess one of the things that's not on the list is one of the things I work a lot with is language attitudes. And so that's thinking about how the beliefs that people have about someone or the language that someone uses, right? And so this can be all sorts of things, which I imagine we'll talk about later. But
absolutely. Yeah. More to come.
Yeah.
So Janette is going to get us started with a fun icebreaker we like to call the Fellow 5 questionnaire. Okay. So take it away, Janette.
Get your seats rolling, everyone. Here we go. What would you say is your biggest passion?
Ooh, my biggest passion. This is kind of boring, I guess, but linguistics. I really, really love learning about languages and about how language works, and that. I suppose also stuffy making. I make what are they called in Canada? Sorry, plushies or stuffies, like stuffed toys. Yes.
What is your relationship with disability or the disability community?
Yeah. So I would say one of the things that I consider really important in my academic career and in what I do is making sure that we enact real world change in some way. And so one of the things that I have done in a lot of my work and that I carry forward in my teaching and everything is making sure that authors of marginalized communities or communities that have been considered marginalized and also themes that relate to marginalized communities are kind of at the forefront. And so that's what I would say. And so one of those traditionally marginalized communities has often been considered the disability community. And so some of the work that I put into my teaching and that is to make sure that people of the disability community who have written on linguistics are actually included as well in my teaching. Yeah.
And now, where your favorite place to go in the Lower Mainland or Metro Vancouver region?
Oh, that's a good question. My favorite place to go. I love going to hiking in the Pacific Spirit Park. I really love that area. I have a little dog, and so it's a place that they also enjoy very much, and so we do that when we can. Yeah.
Okay, what is a surprising or unique quality about yourself?
A surprising or unique quality about myself? Oh, that's such a hard question. I don't know. I think people often think that I'm like more serious than I am because even though I'm kind of tend to be bubbly and stuff, I think I kind of give off this sense of like a seriousness where I'm a very not serious person. That's so good. Yeah.
What animal would be your sidekick?
Oh, I absolutely love all animals, so I don't love that I have to choose one, but a dog.
So sweet.
Yeah.
So next up, we have our next segment called Jenna on the Spot. Ooh. So Jenna is one of our fellows who actually joins us from Victoria and sends in a question based on the theme. And I have to say, she was particularly passionate about this topic, linguistics, because she's someone who has cerebral palsy and has struggled with her speech a bit and been through years and years of speech therapy.
Right.
Yeah, so she had her question, which I will now share.
Why do you think speech is so important?
Even though there are other ways to communicate, why do you think clarity of speech is important?
Oh, that is such a good question. And it's a really big question. So it sort of relates a lot to something that linguists do talk a lot about, and what's the difference between what we consider language or human language and what we consider communication, right? So like a lot of the times, linguists will say, well, something that you do with, for example, an animal that you have might be considered communication. You understand each other, you're giving each other signals, and that sort of thing. But it's not what we would consider sort of to have the same properties that we think human language has, right? Because one of the things linguists care about is what are the properties that language have. And so one of the things that has been discussed a lot is why does human language actually work? And something about that is sort of related to clarity, which is like we understand each other if we know the same signals. So if we know what the other person is actually trying to produce, then we're going to understand it. And so it's not exactly the same as clarity, but it's sort of related in some way. If we know the same kinds of signals and we understand how to interpret them, then we're going to be able to understand each other easier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so language is just one way to help with that, basically.
Absolutely. And being understood is very important. Of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So next up, we have a little card game icebreaker again.
Oh, card game. Okay.
So you're going to pick one of the prompts. So there's sound, image, and memory.
Okay.
And you're going to share the first kind of memory that comes to mind based on that prompt.
On that prompt.
Yeah.
Okay.
So which category would you like to choose? Sound, image, or memory?
Let's go with image.
Image, okay. And if you could describe the image for people just listening.
Okay.
Okay, I'll let you choose.
Okay. Let's go with the middle one. Do I show you?
Yeah, you can show us. You can show the camera.
I can show the camera. All right. There we go. I don't know which. There we go. And this is
Oh, nice.
the first image that comes. All right.
And set the scene for us. What is it?
Right. So this is well, to me, it looks like some kind of restaurant, I suppose, with flowers on the table and 4 chairs around a table, and has a view to the outside of skyscrapers with a beautiful kind of lights across the top. And this actually reminds me a lot of sort of when I was doing my graduate studies, we would often, graduate students and also the kind of professors would go together to restaurants or various other places and kind of have discussions about, mostly not about academic stuff, to be honest, mostly just about your kind of lives and your, and what you were doing and, how things were going and that kind of thing. And I think that picture sort of reminds me a little bit of the sort of atmosphere. I would say it doesn't look anything like any of the stuff I would have seen, but sort of the kind of calm evening atmosphere. I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Should I give that back?
Yes, perfect. So that leads us to our next segment, which is called Off-ish Hours.
Yeah.
And it's our fun version of office hours.
Okay.
So I will start us off. The first question. To start, what is linguistics? And what first got you interested in it?
Sure. Yeah, that is a really great question. So I'll start off with something about what it's not, because it's the question that pretty much all linguists get, which is, how many languages do you speak? And while I actually do happen to speak more than one language and know more than one language, that isn't really what linguistics is about. What we're usually trying to understand is, how do languages work? How do they work in our brain? How do we perceive them? How do we produce them? So things about sort of like how you use your hands for sign language, or for, your mouth for spoken language to produce language. How do things come together to do that? How do, once we produce something, how is it that those sounds actually go through air and then hit your eardrum, or the kind of the movements go through light waves and you perceive them with your eyes, and then you kind of process them in your brain. So that's a lot. Also, linguistics is huge, so it's not just all about kind of contemporary or right here and now, but a lot of the time there are people who talk like I do who actually work on things to do with how was language in the past, or how is language changing, and what does that mean about the way that we do all of these things. And a lot of times that involves comparing one language to another language. And so I would say linguistics is the kind of the way that people sort of try and come up with all of this stuff together, is by saying it's the scientific study of language and how language works and how language is perceived, produced, and what we think about language. Something like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I learned something new now. What is an accent, and do we all have one?
Oh, this is such a great question. This is one of the first things that I do in one of my kind of introductory classes, is I ask the question of who in the room has an accent, and then ask them to put up their hands. And this is because the word accent can mean lots of different things. So from a linguist's perspective, accent is within one language, what is the way that you pronounce certain things, right? And that would be, usually we think of accent relating to like areas of the world. So, like people might say that in British Columbia, there's a British Columbian English accent, right? So an accent of English, right? And so accent is about the way kind of we pronounce different words, and similarly in sign languages where you get pronunciation differences, right? And so accent is basically just about sort of what we call the phonetic side of things. And so this is the kind of pronunciation differences. And what was the second part of the question? Because I totally forgot now.
Oh, it's okay. Do we all have one?
Oh, yeah. It depends how you're using this word. If you're using it like a linguist does, then yes, the answer is we all have an accent. And if you've ever experienced going somewhere where you didn't grow up, then you'll notice that others will all of a sudden potentially even comment on your accent because it's not the one that they've heard kind of around them all the time, right? And so when I moved to the UK in France, I got a lot of questions about, so where are you from? And this was partly related to the way that I sounded and didn't sound exactly like they were expecting from someone who had grown up there, for instance, or something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me into our follow-up question.
Sure.
Is there such a thing as a Canadian accent, or even one that's unique to BC, which I think there is, considering you already brought it up?
Yes, yeah. This is a really great question. So there is such a thing as a Canadian accent, and it's kind of, so there's been work on the English that's spoken in Canada for a very long time. I mean, very long time. There's way more work in, some other areas on English, but for kind of a decent number of years, a number of decades. And it's clear that there are differences in the way that English is spoken in Vancouver compared to, well, according to our work, even some differences with the way that English is spoken in the Okanagan.
Wow.
People have said before, like commented about, they might be able to hear when someone is from Alberta, parts of Alberta. And then we know that there are some properties that seem to happen in many different places across Canada, which is why a lot of the times people do say there is a Canadian accent, because there is some things that seem to happen in a lot of different kind of regions of Canada. That being said, of course, that is not including a whole lot of other individuals who are in Canada, right? And who are speaking, English or other languages. But yeah, so I mean, it's definitely there is such a thing, but kind of I think there's a lot of debate about what exactly that means and you know how we should think about it. Yeah.
Could you explain if there was a Vancouver accent, what are some properties about that? I'd be interested.
Oh, right. Right. Yes. So one of the things that we find, and this is not just in Vancouver, but is that, for instance, if like the word egg, the beginning sound of that in many regions, although not all, this happens in different places, but this is one example, sounds a little bit more like an A than like an eh. And so in lots of places that the word sounds more like egg, but you can tell, as someone from the kind of southern British Columbia area, I don't say it like that. I actually say egg, which is much more sort of like an A kind of sound, like in bake or something like that. So that's an example. But other examples which people, will tell you all sorts of things about is there's lots of specific words. And so that's outside of what linguists often think of as accent. That's more dialect. So if you get into different words, then that's more about what linguists will call dialects. But yeah, different kind of words, or even the pronunciation. So this is a big thing that people talk about, the pronunciation of different places within Vancouver. So someone might sound more like they're from Vancouver if they pronounce specific street names or they, in a certain way.
Makes sense.
Yeah. One of them being actually Vancouver, where you have so I don't actually do it naturally, but losing the first vowel a little bit and pronouncing the N as being more of like back farther in your mouth is apparently more
Interesting.
So interesting.
more local.
Wow. Okay. How to sound like a local.
Our episode title is You Talk Funny. People sometimes say that when people sound different, what does it actually mean when people think someone talks funny? And what does that matter?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So at the beginning, I said I work on language attitudes, and so this is actually very relevant for that. So what does it mean when someone says that someone talks funny? It can mean so many different things. Mostly, I think what that sort of phrase is probably encoding, although you'd have to ask every person who who said it, but is something to do with a difference in what someone's expecting to hear and what they actually hear. That might actually not match up to what someone even produced. So we have a lot of kind of work that's been done that shows that people don't necessarily perceive things in the way that they were actually produced. So they might perceive them completely differently than what was actually produced in language. But I think it's sort of this mismatch of I wasn't expecting to hear that, or I wasn't expecting to see that, right? And so that is sort of where this kind of funny thing comes from, and not being able to describe what the difference is, right? Not being able to say, oh, it was because, you used this word instead of this word, or that kind of thing. So that's my guess at what funny often means. And realistically, it shouldn't matter, right? So and we know that when you have more familiarity and when you've been around more people who use language in more different ways, then you're less likely to have this sort of reaction of not expecting something, because you just have so much experience here, being around lots of different kind of language users. And so that's that kind of helps a lot with language attitudes. But it is true that, we've language attitudes, so the beliefs that people can have about others based on their language can be pretty detrimental. So, the work that I do is actually work on employment. And so how someone is perceived in an interview situation, for instance, when they're going for a job. And kind of the research that I've done is looking at if the only thing you change is the way that someone sounds and the words are all exactly the same, do you see that people might rate different people differently, right? And so and they do, right? So, I mean, not everyone, but, a lot of people on average will sort of have these kind of, differences in the way that they would judge someone. And so the main thing that I work on, though, is not to change what the person who is producing language is doing, but to change how others perceive the people producing language. And so the thing is, you don't want to say to someone, therefore you should change the way that you use language. What you want to say is, well, okay, so if we know this is the case, how can we make it so that other people won't do that judgment? And so that's sort of what I work on some of my research. Yeah.
That totally makes sense. I kind of thought of something when you were saying.
Oh, sorry.
That was good what you were saying, but I kind of made me think of a time when about the funniness in languages. Like, my grandma, she's not here anymore, but like she has a thick Greek accent, and she says some things that they weren't like making any sense, but to her it made sense, and then I would laugh, and then she'd think I'm laughing at her, but no, I thought it was very cute.
Yeah.
And then I explained why I thought it was cute, and then we both ended up laughing.
Exactly.
That's how it kind of works sometimes. Like,
Exactly.
no right or wrong way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That this is the thing that linguists absolutely 100% always say is there is no good or bad way, no right or better way to use language. You're never going to get a linguist to tell you, we actually get asked this a lot, like, so how should I actually be saying this? And my answer is usually, well, how do you? How do you say it? Okay, then that's the right way.
Yeah, the way you say it is the right way.
The way that you say it is the right way.
True.
I know what you meant, and if I didn't, I'll clarify. But either way, the way that you do it is the right way of doing it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, amazing. My next question is more about the Language Latitudes project.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, could you explain a little bit more about like how these different factors affect like how people are seen like professionally or socially?
Yeah. So, the Language Latitudes project was a public engagement project that we had that was me with a number of other collaborators who were promoting the idea of, basically language attitudes exist. It's not realistic to assume that people will not judge others. But what we can do is inform people about the fact that they do exist, so that, when you are going into a situation like an interview and you're on the panel, then maybe you're going to be thinking just a little bit about, oh, okay, actually, why, do I actually think this because of something they said, or do I think this because of how they said it, right? And so this is kind of, the project was basically kind of working on doing some public engagement work and kind of getting people just knowing a little bit about what language attitudes is and how they work and what are the effects. And so we also had a multilingualism event, because one of the other things is, I think it is such a wonderful thing that there are so many different languages used in, well, let's say British Columbia, because that's the context I know best. And so I think that is really wonderful, and so we should be celebrating that. And so we had these kind of events for celebrating multilingualism and for instance books that for children that have multiple languages in them and this kind of thing. And I think I've forgotten the last part of the question, so I said what language latitudes.
Oh, I think that answered it.
Did it? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
It's too good. Besides accents, what other speech patterns affect how people are seen? What might this be connected to disability?
Right. Okay. So this is a very interesting question. So based on the work that I and many people have done, everything that someone does with their language will affect the way that they're seen. So like, the way that someone pronounces words, the way that they organize their sentences, whether or not they, use their intonation in one way or another, will all affect. If they have ums or ahs, or any filled pauses, then these all affect the way that you're perceived. And the really cool thing about the kind of language attitudes is the context really matters. So, if you're in a informal context, so like if you're in, talking around with your friends and you use language that you would use with someone you don't know very well, that's also going to be picked up and be kind of maybe judged is not the right way to say it, but it'll be picked up as like, why is this happening? And some that might lead to others thinking maybe you're trying to be more distant at that time, or you're upset, or like this kind of thing. And so we pick up really well on these cues when your language sort of is at odds to what people are expecting it to be in the context that it's in. And so this is sort of, I think, really interesting. And there was a lot of really great work done in the last, I would say actually not that long ago, last, let's say 5 or a little bit more years, precisely looking at some of the claims that have been made about language in the disability community and how it works and how there might be differences in kind of like processing. And actually, one of the kind of big things to come out of this is that, one of the big issues is that a lot of the work was done by people who were not in the disability community, had no idea about sort of like how processing is going to kind of work in the same way. And so even the way that getting data was designed not for that context, in the same way that if I design an experiment, for an interview, but I use it in a cafe, it's going to be not the right, that's not going to work. It's not, it's just going to be not going to give you the kind of reliable information that you want from this kind of research. And so one of the things they were saying is actually we need to kind of reassess the way people have thought about language that is used by members of the disability community in general, because we haven't been thinking about it from a perspective where we would even start to be able to understand what's what's the differences. Unfortunately, I think this is a very, very new area. And so I mean, that's not unfortunate. I guess that's good. It's good that this is a new area that people are getting into and that are really kind of exploring sort of like, okay, so what does this mean from a linguistics perspective?
Absolutely.
Totally makes sense.
I'm actually going to pass it off to Janette for the next question.
Ooh. So you've looked at a bias in speech-to-text technology. What do these symptoms fail with certain accents or voices? How does that connect to language bias more broadly?
Yeah, okay, that's really great. So, yes, so I did do work on speech-to-text. So this is like this is a type of language technology, right, where basically you speak into it and then it types out what you've said. And so what I was trying to figure out is if you have exactly the same words being said and the only thing that differs is the accent of the speaker, then what differences do you find? And we had some really interesting results. Some of them were really positive in that people that we'd expected it to kind of make more errors on, and by errors I mean like not be able to produce the text the way that it was actually said, so produce something different than what was said. They had a better kind of production, a better transcript than we expected. But for some of the speakers, it was pretty bad in that, like, it would just, we kind of, in a paper that'll be coming out, I basically said that I think what happens is the system just gives up. So it would be like, it would remove whole sentences and so, I mean, this is an issue because one of the things that in other research that we know, right, is that this leads to people trying to adjust it the way that they are using the technology, when really what we want to be doing is adjusting the way the technology works. And so, I think that is something that we are working on and people are working on, but it's kind of hard just because, and I'm not a computational linguist, so I don't understand all of this, but because some of what these technology do, it's kind of hard to know exactly what they're doing inside their little box, right? I mean, they're not a box, but like what's happening exactly in there. And so this relates to human biases so the big one that people have talked about is we have to train these models. So we have to basically teach them how to learn how to do this, right? You know, and a lot of the time the data that they'll get will be from a very small portion of the population, right? That uses that language. And so that means that they're already going to be biased towards only being able to do well for those voices that they've learned off of, right? And that tends to be people who are going to, you know, answer calls for, you know, for recording your voices, or, you know, be online more often in a way that their voice has been recorded and that kind of thing. And so then that sort of limits kind of how well it's done. Plus, you know, originally probably when things were starting out, they were trying to test it just to see if the systems would work. So they were probably trying to use a relatively voices that were very similar to each other, right? But that I can't know for sure because, you know, I don't know what the first models were doing. But yeah.
You also study variation of indigenous languages like Tlingit and I Ajutham. So what have you learned from this work that's different from studying English?
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. That's a really interesting question. So what have I learned from this work? Oh, I have learned so very much. So one of the kind of big things that has been very important for me with this work is realizing how many assumptions that I had about language because of my own language background, because of, you know, what I experienced when I was learning about linguistics and all of these kinds of things. But there's so many assumptions that I have about how language works. And, you know, one of the things that's really nice about this work for me personally, from a kind of a personal perspective, is kind of throwing some of that away and saying, okay, well, let's build from the bottom up instead. Let's go from this language and let's see how it works. So that's kind of from a personal research perspective, that's really lovely. But also, you know, I just really love thinking through with the members that I collaborate with, because I do this work all with collaboration with people who are in the community. Well, so with either researchers who are in the communities or Indigenous scholars who are researchers. And so, you know, thinking through like, okay, so, you know, if I'm from a perspective that I would have taken, this is the first step I would have done. But because realistically, the best thing is if we can get, for instance, this sound file transcribed so that it can be used in teaching or something like that, let's prioritize that and let's do that first, and then we can kind of think about how we can use it, you know, in the kind of the study that we're doing that's from a kind of, you know, a sound-based study, you know, like why it is that, you know, you get for instance in Tlingit, something that we were working on is you have this sound that's a little bit like a w sound, but it's without rounding your lips, so it's like ara. And we were trying to figure out why it is that that's a sound that doesn't happen very frequently across a lot of world languages. And so, you know, this was kind of a really interesting thing, because one of the things we sort of thought about is, well, maybe it changed, or maybe it's not that it doesn't currently, but maybe at some point it did, or maybe it didn't. We could never know because we don't have recordings from, you know, forever. But it's, you know, the assumption is that, you know, it's just rare, but maybe it wasn't rare, or maybe it was less rare, and we just don't know that because also we don't have data and we don't have information on kind of many languages that are enough information about many languages out there. Yeah.
Cool.
Sweet.
So cool. Yeah. Makes me want to learn more. So now we're off to our last segment.
Okay.
The name of the show, What's in the Hat? This time, any of us can answer, but I'll have Amanda pull the question for Janette first.
Okay, let's.
Okay.
Do you think languages divide us more or connect us more?
Oh, that's a good one. I think like it could be both, really. Like, to be honest, like it could. The way it could divide us is like if you're trying to say something mean behind someone's back in a different language, that could make someone feel like they're being bullied. But then like if you want to connect us more, like there are some similarities. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I was talking to my grandpa in Greek in a Uber share, or sorry, regular Uber, and I said to him, "Ti soupa fiaknes," and this Persian man said to me, "Why'd you ask your grandpa what soup you want to make?" And I was like, "How'd you know that?" And he's like, "It's similar to my dialect in my country where I'm from." And I was like, "Oh, that's so great." And we had a nice conversation. Like, so that kind of united us in the way I see it. So like it really depends on the circumstance and where you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Janette, do you want to pull a question?
Sure. Okay, who am I gonna ask?
You can ask me, you can ask Amanda.
Okay.
You can both answer.
All right. Maybe both of you want to ask
Okay.
it. If you could make up a language, what would you call it?
Oh. This was one of my assignments, actually, once in school, where we had to make up a language or start the beginnings of one, but I don't remember what it was called.
Oh no.
I don't know. I would want to name it something like fun, like, I don't know, like nom nom or something like that. I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know, that's really funny because actually, I way back in my undergrad, I worked a lot on created languages. That was something I did. But what would I call it? Oh, I know. I would want to name it something fun too, but I don't know. Let's say, I don't know. I don't have a name. How do you name a language? Okay. Thinking. I would call it Ame. I don't know. Sure.
Sounds good.
First the thing that came to my mind.
You forgot to pick one too.
I said mine was nom nom.
I'm sorry,
N-O-M,
mine's-
N-O-M. Okay. This is for both of you.
Okay.
What's your favorite non-language sound? So, like, it could be like...
La 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 la.
I don't know. It could be like a kettle boiling or like... I don't know, sound you like birds chirping, something like that. Rain.
I'm being goofy today. That's what I said. La, la, la,
That was it?
la.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, this is what Grandpa always sings in the morning. He just sings randomly in the morning. La 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 la.
That's very nice.
It makes me laugh when I wake up.
Okay, I actually do know what my favorite sound is. So when it's really, really quiet, like 4 a.m. or something, and it's just snowed or it is snowing and you hear the crunching from like it hitting trees or hitting the ground, that's got to be one of my favorite sounds.
Yeah.
That's good. So my mind is so modern today.
I know, that's great. That's great. Okay, well, that reaches us to the end of
Oh my
our
God.
show already. And Janette, I think you have a question for the viewers.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Humans all laugh and smile in similar ways, but there are thousands of languages. If all humans communicated in the same language, what do you think we'd all lose?
Wow. Good question.
That is a
good question. That's a
good question.
thinker.
That's a deep one.
Good question.
Okay. And Amanda, you care a lot about making research more open and accessible for everyone. For people curious about linguistics, where's a good place to start?
A good place to start. So I would say a really great place to start is on YouTube. There's a lot of really good resources that have been made through various kind of professional companies and things, just to get an idea of like what linguistics is, what language is, and that sort of thing. So that's maybe a good place to start. But obviously, you know, we have information on our website as well on language latitudes and also on UBC Linguistics. If you have a chance to go to some public lectures, there's usually public lectures and things like that, then yeah, those are good places.
Super cool. Well, thank you so much. And I think that leads to the end of our show. Well, thanks and catch you next time.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
Linguistics.
That's a wrap on this episode of What's in the Hat. Thanks for tuning in.
If you enjoyed everything you heard, please don't forget to follow us on social media and don't forget to share it with a friend too.
It really helps new listeners find the show. See you there.
We want to give a special thank you to our guest, Amanda Cardoso, for joining the fellowship on this episode of our mini-series Laughing Matters, which is hosted by Hannah and Janette. Some of the topics discussed in this episode, follow the links on the screen or find them on our page. What's in the Hat Laughing Matters is a proud production of the Social Media Fellowship. This series is executive produced by Hannah Nolan and me, Matthew Ratchmat. Graphics and branding by Janelle Hagerman. Guest booking and research by Hannah Nolan. Production, sound design, and video editing by Matthew Ratchmat. Production assistance by Kofi Abrefa. Music is intro and outro by Janelle Hagerman. Next Steps by Half Cool. Point Counterpoint by John Patitucci. Rise Funk and Trunk by Windows Again. Speak the Truth by Go by the Ocean and Ryan McCaffrey. And Waterpark Radio Ad by Freedom Trail Studio. The Laughing Matters miniseries is produced with the support of TELUS STORYHIVE. Plus, we want to give a special thanks to Possibilities Association of British Columbia for supporting us in making this episode. You can find the fellowship alongside more episodes and clips on our Instagram at social.media.fellows. You can also find us on YouTube at social.media.fellowship and TikTok at socialmediafellows. That's with no dots or periods. You can also listen to us on the radio every second Thursday a month at 1 p.m. on 101.9 FM CITR or on citr.ca/forward/what's-in-the-hat. Please visit our website at socialmediafellowship.ca or our linktree at linktree/social.media.fellows. Again, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.